IEBC is on fire. The chairman, the CEO, even the cleaners are starting fires everywhere. This is Afro Politico. Welcome everyone. This is Afro Political at our local at Jay's Bar here in Westlands, and plenty is happening this week. We're just about to get on all that. This is James Smart.
This is Marvin Tumbo.
Great. Now, we want to talk about IEBC, we want to talk about constitutional crisis, we want to talk about politics, where we go from here. We have lots to talk about. But first, thanks for the comments. Thanks for all of you who watched our show last week. And yes, I know you liked this fact box down here. It's brilliant. You like it? We have it actually because of Marvin. Marvin is slippery with his facts. So we created it for the first show because
I'm the biggest fact checker in the country.
That's what you have to check. Everyone fact checks Marvin. So thank you very much for noticing that. One comment that we want to go about from Carol Kathurima, or Catherine Kathurima. Carol Kathurima. You think that we're going to have an increased voter turnout in this election? Why is that?
Carol thinks we'll have more voter turnouts. I think because I can see two sides to this. Yeah. Number one is you have more voter turnout because there's an emotional issue. Right. Yeah. Last week you said that a lot of people went out and voted. Yeah. And the Supreme Court annulled this. Once it annulled the decision, it meant that whether you liked it or not, those people who voted felt invalidated by the announcement.
Right.
Whoever they voted for. Yeah. Now, having been invalidated, what do you do as a result? You make an emotional decision. That emotional decision is to make sure that your voice is heard, to make sure that the annulment, yeah. Right. So you have to make it more pronounced, yeah. And which is why I said when you look at what will happen over the next few weeks, and even what has started, it's an emotional appeal to people. It's right. You made your voice heard, but it did not count. But let's make it count.
This is on both sides, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and which I said, the smartest politicians going forward will make this an emotional issue. Yeah?
Because you can't keep on going promising roads.
You are voted based on the promises you made, and that election passed.
Right.
And because it was invalidated, now you have to ride on the emotion of the people whose voices they feel were not made to count.
And that is a good segue to bring us to the first point and the first topic. And this week, the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission is in a mess, is in a serious turmoil. So this story actually starts on the Friday of the Supreme Court decision. After the judges handed the decision of annulling the presidential results, two things happened. One, the chairman of the commission issued a statement. In that statement, he said a few things. One, he acknowledged the Supreme Court decision and said, we await for the full judgment. But he was humble in his statement. Secondly, the CEO sent another statement, which was a total opposite, a polar opposite of what the chairman was talking about. The CEO, in his statement, thanked the staff, congratulated them for a job well done, and went to the length of saying, once you'll be called upon again, do it like you did the last time. And from then on, anyone who follows current affairs would have figured out there is quite a problem between the interpretation of what happened in this election between the chairman of the commission, Wafula Chebukati, and the CEO, Ezra Chiloba. Now, fast forward to yesterday. And before yesterday, the chairman has tried to bring in a new team to manage this election. been resisted in some courses. I don't know if that has been sorted or solved yet. We'll discuss that a bit. But let's start from just what the memo that was leaked. and I was among the first people who went out with it because I thought it was important. I thought that the chairman enumerating about 12 points of exactly what he felt was the problem with his election and asking the CEO to account for it, I didn't think that was out of line. I think that was a good thing. We are there of where we're saying, and his imputation is the chairman is throwing the CEO under the bus. Where do you feel?
Under the SGR.
There's no coming back for Ezra.
No, it's. I'll say two things. Number one, this is an IEBC where you have had nothing leak yet. Yeah, not anything that is legitimate, at least. Yeah. Now, if
because it was tight ship, it was run like a tight ship.
It was a very tight ship.
Yeah.
Now, if you have the leakages start now, yeah. The leakage, it means now you have people, it shows this breakage, yeah, at a point where they need to be more united to be able to run this election. Because consider this is the first time we have, okay, it's the third or fourth time this is happening in the world. And then you cannot afford to have this. So when you have, that letter is not, it was leaked as a move.
So, I mean, I see where you're going with this, but let's bring it back to the center, all right? A Supreme Court said that there were obvious problems with our election. We accept that, all right, as a premise, because they're the biggest court in the land, and we have to go with their decision. We have no further appealing.
And the chairman preempted the Supreme Court.
well, the chairman...
No, he acted as a result of the Supreme Court, but also that letter being leaked, yeah, it preempted the judgment that the Supreme Court is supposed to give, and even his appointment of this team, the new team,
right?
His appointment of the new team also is preempting the Supreme Court ruling, which was said to be delivered within 21 days. And why is he doing that? Because at the end of the day, you cannot say all of these problems, yeah, the 12 problems, rest at the door of Chiloba.
But the CEO, let's first, educate ourselves here. The CEO is the accounting officer of the commission.
Yes.
So every contract, the ins and the outs are resting on his doorstep. Mm-hmm. That we have to accept,
yes,
right?
They do.
If anyone signs, any contract, the ballot papers, how they are sent, the people who get employed, they get employed by the CEO to work for the secretariat. So there are two functions here. The secretariat on the day-to-day running of the commission and the elections, and then there is the commission, the commissioners, who are actually the constitutional side of the thing, who actually now would gazette a decision that is made by the secretariat and that sort of thing. Now, I think from where I sit and from where I view things, I think the chairman feels blindsided by a few things that happened in that election. And I go back to the letter that he sent. He felt that there are certain things that happened in that election that he should have been aware of, all right, as the chairman. The CEO was the one in charge of...
Whose fault is that?
I think we can, to be quite frank and to be bold, I think we can charge Chebukati for being, not knowing, all right? But we can't, for errors of omission, but we can't charge him for errors of commission. On Chiloba, on the other hand, it's quite different.
What are these? Because at the end of the day, none of us today can say that what the Supreme Court relied on to make the decision they did. We can only
speculate.
We can only speculate.
Right. But we went through this process together. Marvin, let's not edit history.
No, what I'm saying is,
in fact, let's not edit. Yeah. We all had the lawyers speaking. We all saw how the IEBC conducted itself.
Fair enough. But also the judgment, the judgment that was made. There's a reason it takes 21 days, because even us, we made decisions and we made our arguments based on TV edits. Yeah. We didn't. It was TV edits. So with the parts we saw are the parts we are relying on.
All right.
Yeah. So the judges themselves, they needed 21 days
to put out a reasoned argument.
So
I take that.
I'm saying we even for us, and especially going forward, if you're going to make decisions around how the elections are going to be run, yeah, you cannot try and say that you cannot preempt these reasoned arguments and say and run ahead of that and say we are going to do it in this manner because you are speculating on the reasons.
So let's get this right then. We obviously, can we agree that there was an obvious problem with our last election, and that problem rests at the doorstep of IEBC? Can we agree on that? It doesn't
given the elections was annulled.
Yes.
I'll say there are problems.
Yes.
There are problems that the Supreme Court saw.
Right.
And what we would want to do is interrogate what problems the Supreme Court saw were, and even the IEBC itself needs to interrogate these problems based on the ruling that is to be given.
Now, the taxpayers are spending billions of shillings on that election. All right. Now, we can't say that the Kenyan taxpayer, where is the space and the place for the Kenyan taxpayer, for the you and me, who spend so much money to run this election, all right, and are going to pay for it, and we spend that day to go and vote, and then this decision went the way it did. Someone must take individual responsibility, and that is why in this country we have a problem that we have this very nice way of running back and saying, you know what, it's almost like working for us is not only a privilege, but you're doing us a favor. Because this is the feeling that I get, and I get it in people in public office, that all the time they refuse to see the sense that they work for us. They have certain responsibilities. And if things don't work out well, Marvin, there's individual responsibility. As Marvin, you say, you know what, I was given this task, and I've done this, and as it turned out, another institution has looked at it and said, you know what, it was not good, it was not proper, I take full responsibility for it. We don't do that at any level. And I think this is exactly what is playing out at the IEBC.
But now,
and I have a problem with that.
And okay, and it's fair to have a problem with an annulled election because too much money was spent on it. But what I'm arguing is, you cannot have, as a head of such an institution with such an extensive workforce, you cannot go out knowing you're going to need that particular workforce again. You're not going to need them in a matter of months to work again. You cannot let the ruling demotivate them to a level where none of them feel that their work is worth anything. And number two, number two,
you can't run away from that point.
No, number two, you see, wait.
Okay.
Patience is a virtue, man. Number two is fair enough when you talk about public servants taking responsibility for mishaps that have happened. But the one thing you're not saying is that those mishaps have not been defined. Yeah? They've been alluded to. Yeah? They've been speculated on. But they have not.
Do we have
They have not been defined. Because at the end of the day, look, if you can't, there's this what do you say? There's a saying that's saying, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. Yeah? If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. So only at the point where you are able to say, we have 10 items on this table, 3 were wrong. So what 3 are those? What are the issues with them?
All right.
How do we improve?
Good.
But until we get to that point, we'll be solving non-existent problems.
So I take the point. Here's the thing, that until we know what the problem is, then we can't
What are we
improve
solving?
it. But here's the bigger problem there from where I said that we have created a scenario, an environment in this country that it's becoming impossible. And it's always impossible that something has gone fundamentally wrong, all right, under someone's watch. But that someone would stand and say, show me the evidence. Okay, give me the evidence, or otherwise what you're alluding to is rumors, it's propaganda, it is, lies that are spread by my political detractors. We always run under this partisan idea that if something has gone fundamentally wrong and people have pointed to it, and now that we even have an institution like the Supreme Court has said that our election, there were irregularities and illegalities. All right, something has gone fundamentally wrong. Marvin, we can't run away. This election was not just another walk in the park. This was very different, And for both sides, for President Uhuru, who was declared winner, and for the other side who felt that their election was stolen, they should feel both, in
They're
my
both
view,
aggrieved.
they should feel both aggrieved and make sure that the people who presided this election do not have an opportunity to do it over again. Because this is not only just a waste of our taxes and resources, but like you say, we put our country in a place whereby we are stuck in a cycle for maybe, I don't know, God knows when, how we can fix it. Now, we can't allow those people who preceded this election to sit back and tell us, guys, no one has told us exactly what the problem is. The problem is that you guys ran a very bloody, stupid election. That is the truth. Now, whether we like it or not, the Supreme Court has found it, and you have to go back to an election. And here's the truth. Both sides need to be genuinely aggrieved by this decision.
The CJ said the elections will have to be run again in strict compliance with the laid out guidelines and constitutional.
Right.
Yeah. Now, meaning it was not ran in compliance with the laid out constitutional requirements.
Right.
Now, where that was the case.
There's so many cases, Marvin.
No.
For instance,
No, look, you again, speculation.
No.
Where? Because why are we waiting for a reasoned judgment?
No, Marvin. No, listen. I agree. Listen, we have to wait for the full judgment of the Supreme Court. But just today, as we know today, of the irregularities and illegalities of parliamentary seats, Senate seats, the ones which are running and we'll be discussing in the next short while. People with the hundreds of petitions which are showing up. It shows it was just not just a presidential, but this was something that...
Does a petition mean that there are irregularities? People disagree. Look, you have losers and you have sore losers.
I agree. And we'll have to wait for that as well.
Yes.
But from where I sit, which is to say that from the premise of having an election that has been annulled, is it your point that we should just say, you know what, this election from where we sit was a brilliant, well-run election, and we just disagree with the judges, so let's do it all over again? Or saying that there was an actual problem that, you know what, we might have missed it and we might not agree, but we should not do it the very same way that we did the last time.
But who's planning to do it the same way? What I've said is that from where we sit, the Supreme Court, in their judgment, and in their wisdom, whether you agree with it or not, said there was a problem with the election. Right. That's number one.
Right.
Number two, they said they were going to issue a reasoned judgment, which we are waiting for. Now, following that reasoned judgment is what I'm saying, you will be able to see where the problems were, where they are highlighting the problems were, and you can correct them on the basis of that reasoned judgment. If you act before that, if you preempt what their reasons were, you might go and say, SMART was the problem, the IT system was the problem, yet the problem was a personnel issue. You might say the problem was X, Y, Z, yet it was ABC.
So here's the thing. Bring back to the chairman's point of view as we wind this down. The chairman is part of the IEBC. He obviously conducted his own investigations, which brought him to write this memo, very detailed memo, and asking very specific questions. Is the chairman on the right side to say, you know what, this can be dealt internally as well? Supposing the Supreme Court had thrown out the petition. Were these steps not logical steps that should have been taken?
This is the chairman who also announced the president as the president-elect. Yeah? Isn't it?
I don't know. I'll have to check the footage. I mean, we have to wait for reasoned judgment, right? And see. No, we have to wait for reasoned judgment.
A reasoned judgment on an announcement.
We have to. I mean, that has been my argument the entire afternoon, so we have to wait for his judgment to see if this is the chairman who announced the president. But anyway, make your point.
That was my point.
Brilliant. Let's move to the next point. Does it look like we are going to have this election? Does it even look like another election is going to be held in a little less than 4 or so weeks?
Number one, there are key issues that will come about. The IEBC has said the fresh elections will have 2 candidates. You've seen candidates who have gone to court.
Right.
How does this affect this time that is remaining? How does it? Because it means IEBC might go ahead and print the ballot papers for the 2 candidates, and then another court rules that you need to add the remaining candidates or even new fresh candidates because it's a fresh election.
Right.
So these all needs to happen within a period of 39 days.
Right.
Yeah. Again, there are certain things that need to be changed based on the ruling itself. What time do we have to change that? There might be significant issues. Who knows? So if you have all that, and then now you have political players who are saying we have certain demands, yeah, that must be met. Take NASA, for instance. They said we are not going to go for elections until our demands are met. Now, that means either of two things. They refuse because they disagree with the 17th of October, yeah? And politically, they have an incentive. And I say politically because I know the numbers are not in their favor. We're going to discuss we're going to discuss the politics, yeah, in a minute. But the numbers are not in their favor. So if they are not in a favor, you have more incentive to extend this for a bit longer, to milk everything in this in this period.
Right. So a couple of points. One, the Supreme Court decision, I think, does not stop the IEBC from planning a fresh election. If, for argument's sake, that the IEBC in itself comes from a good place, that they in fact want to have an election as free and fair, election that is verifiable, that these are the individuals that are stuck inside the IEBC. So I don't think it stops them. But I think the problem we have is this: it's twofold. That the Supreme Court is indicting the IEBC, the individuals in the IEBC, but the individuals in the IEBC still want to run this election, all right? Because they disagree that this election was run, poorly and badly, and so they want still to run this election. Now, I think those are two very points of conflict for this reason, that once we found that there was a problem with the election, a few things should have happened in my view. I think some of the individuals who were the ones who are running this election should have stood aside. I think what's going to happen is this: that the Supreme Court is going to give its detailed ruling, I think, next week. And in that ruling, we'll realize that there is a lot of problems, all right, with the IEBC in itself and in the running of that election. And we'll find ourselves in a situation whereby it's impossible for us to change the IEBC because we can't change it. We find ourselves in a constitutional crisis, all right?
We can't.
And which means...
Hence why I was saying the Supreme Court must have needed to have restraint. Which brings me to, I think, my point on the Supreme Court and its pronouncements. Taking into consideration their ruling, yeah, then it falls on them. It falls on them squarely, yeah, to make sure that the reasoned arguments they provide and the way forward they stipulate, yeah, can and must be doable within their remaining time, because they will be purveyors of a constitutional crisis, being the Supreme Court itself, if what they propose can't and cannot be done within the set time.
I think anything that any human being wants to do can be done. We can find the resources and the wherewithal and the opportunity and the political, I don't know, what is it called? The political will.
Wherewithal.
Yes, to do it. All right. Welcome back. You're watching Afro Political. We're trying to help this country have better conversation, respectful, very deliberate discussion, have passionate discussion that respects both sides of the argument, three sides of the coin, five even they exist, but at the end of the day, have respectful and coherent arguments.
And to advance any political conversations forward. Because,
awesome.
Just because.
Just because. How's that even a point, Marvin? That's just taking me for a ride. Let's talk about the how this country looks like it's possibly can get into a constitutional crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing, that we cannot have an election without a national chairman of the IEBC. We can't. Now, we are in an interesting situation here that the chairman of the commission, Wafula Chebukati, who, as we've been talking, has a bit of issues with the CEO, and obviously
and commissioners
and other commissioners as well. I mean, these shifting commissioners, 3, 4, 4, 2, 5, 3. These
like the Supreme Court.
Yeah. The commissioners are also, choosing sides as we go through this. Supposing the chairman resigns, we can't have an election, and that's it. This is a proper constitutional crisis.
You'll have to expound why that can't happen.
Okay, so here's the thing. The chairman of the commission is the one who has to sign for the certificate of the president, announce the result, and give the certificate. That is his responsibility on the election.
And the president has to sign.
And the most importantly, if Wafula Chebukati resigns, this is the situation we have, that we have a parliament. So parliament can theoretically go on and recruit a new chairman. But the president cannot sign because he's president-elect. Or he's not, his term is over, as it is now, because he's no longer elect.
Doesn't the constitution extend his term for 2 extra months pending the election?
No, it doesn't. He doesn't. He cannot do anything substantive. All right? He's the president, yes, but he can't do anything substantive until we hold the election. So, Wafula Chebukati resigns, we are so cooked. Unless we ask Maraga to be the chairman of the IEBC. I think that would be a cool idea. Marvin loved it. What do you think?
I don't think that's the only thing that precipitates.
No, there are several other ways.
Yeah.
Right.
Because let's talk about a scenario where NASA refuses, as I've alluded to.
I think we'll still have an election if NASA refuses
yes,
to go.
They will, but now you'll have to deal with the issues of legitimacy.
Right.
Yeah.
So if 5 or 6 million people only show up to vote, or all their supporters refuse to show up.
If you have less than 50% of the registered voters come out and vote. You saw in Congo 10%, I think, of voters would come out and vote. So in an entire country.
It becomes an inconsequential election.
It becomes more or less inconsequential. I'm not sure whether it can hold. Maybe you can advise. But also that, I think the elections would go on, but now you'll have legitimacy issues in terms of how many, if an entire section, less than 50%, decides not to go out and vote.
Right.
But I think also critically, the pronouncements that are being made that elections are not going to be held, by political parties, NASA, not political parties,
all right,
that they are not going to be held on the 17th.
But is it not the right of NASA to demand a equal playing field, because they have now a decision of the Supreme Court that actually advances their point of view? So you cannot entirely dismiss
who you see. Also, you cannot, as a football player, and you have a referee.
Let's take this analogy further. If the referee has been unfair to you in the previous game, right, and you've gone up to UEFA or FIFA or whoever it is, and you've lodged your complaints and said, it's true, the ref was unfair, you have a right to say, I do not want that ref again.
Let's take it even further. Now, you as a player, you have problems with the referee, and you've taken it to FIFA. And FIFA have said, yes, there's a problem. Now, as a player, you don't now get to set your own rules and say, we are going to play.
Is it setting new rules, really, Marvin?
It's demanding that the game will only continue as far as we play it the way we want to.
Okay, so my view is this. I think NASA has some genuine grievances.
Some.
All right? Some, I think. All right?
Some.
I think that we have to have IEBC is a constitutional body. There's nothing you can do. You cannot disband it. You cannot make it disappear.
In what time? In the 9 days?
No, you can't. I think you can't.
Yeah.
All right? I think there's several questions which are fundamental and important that are being asked. One is, can we have a sense of both parties, all right, have a fair playing field, that we know servers that are being used, the security walls and the firewalls that are being used, and the KIMS kit. These things that would give confidence of NASA to say we are going to win that election not as a slaughterhouse, but we want to get to a process whereby if we get beaten 3-0 on the pitch, we say, you know what, we were beaten by a better team and better players.
I agree. And what I'm saying is that if you have issues with the referee, and you've gone to the supreme body in charge of the sport, yeah, the onus is on the body to define the rules for both players based on the constitution.
I take the view that we, in this country, we have to get to a place whereby we raise the level of individual responsibility to a level whereby individuals take personal responsibility on failures, whether it is committed by them or by them overseeing a process. I think that is a big step of constitutionalism, all right? But secondly, I think that the biggest responsibility in this country today lies on IEBC, all right? On the chairman, Wafula Chebukati, on CEO Ezra Chiloba, and the thousands of people that they employ. I think that the interest of this country is so huge, and we get everything right most of the time in this country, right? Not everything in this country works perfect, but most of the things work. I mean, compared to our neighbors, all right? Which is a very low standard to put ourselves in. But most things work, right? It's only elections whereby we take 3 steps or 4 steps backwards, you know, and we shouldn't. I think we need one election in this country for us to cross the Rubicon, as it were, and start living in this era of opportunity, in this era of respect, in this era of one man, one vote, in an era whereby we respect institutions, in an era whereby our constitution comes to life. Let's talk about the impact of elections on economy. All right. On Friday, when the Supreme Court announced the decision, they said 90 billion. The Nairobi Security Exchange lost 90 billion. On Monday, when it opened, a further 50 billion, was wiped away. Cumulatively, and 30 billion lost within 2 days. And we're this jittery, and the comments that I'm seeing online are saying, well, you can look at it two ways. Either one, that we are telling you how elections are dangerous and politics interferes with everything, or the price of democracy is really high and we should get it right. On this divide, where are you?
When you look at the charts based on investments into the country, it always dips during these elections. Yeah. But this time round, I think even if there was a dip, it wasn't as much. Yeah, because there was this perception, and even from other talks from observers and whatnot, people never saw these as a do or die kind of election. Which is why the dip that you're talking about in the stock exchange happened on the basis of the Supreme Court ruling, but not on the election period in total, which is what has happened in previous elections. I'm sure you've told someone, let's talk after the elections.
No.
You haven't?
I've paid all my bills, all my credit.
No, it's not it's not even about even payment. Sometimes it's about...
Things have stopped.
Yes, it's because... And I was in an Uber the other day, and the guy was telling me, man, we were telling guys, let's talk. Rather, he was told, he supplied some things, and he was told, let's talk after the elections.
Yeah.
And then now, it's 2 months later, it was after the elections, the Supreme Court ruling
Another one.
did this, and then the conversation, it was 2 months, now it's 4 months. Yeah?
Yeah.
So, and that's the informal area that we are discussing. Yeah? So a lot of these guys are being, even for myself, yeah, the biashara that I'm chasing, a lot of them time you're told, let's discuss the elections. Even now, if you are working with government, yeah, if you are a contractor for government, it's very difficult for certain decisions to be made when there's this, it's a sort of a limbo of sorts, even within government, because there are certain decisions that need and must be made, but guys are beaten over in a limbo of sorts.
Shouldn't that be part of the things that we should fix? Oh no, it's the biggest indication yet of how our civil, our government and our civil servants are so engaged and are so given into politics. All right. Isn't that the biggest evidence yet? Because there is absolutely no reason on why projects should not be continuing. All right. There is no reason, absolutely, all right, why government contracts, should not be going on. It doesn't require the signature of the president. Okay? So why are things at a standstill?
I think it's, I'm not sure whether it's even what do you call it? I'm not even sure it's a conscious decision or a conscious thing that is happening. It's not a rule. It's not a law. I think it's a cultural aspect. Yeah. It's a mind frame of sorts that when you're in elections, things go into a lull of sorts. So I'm not sure whether it's not.
It's not a policy.
It's not a policy. Yeah. It's not a policy, but it's a mind frame. It's a cultural construct that has been there for a long time, and I think it's going to take a minute to work it out.
Let me ask you,
also it happens in government and in private sector as well.
Yeah, I mean,
private sector also are saying, let's see how the elections go.
And because private sector gets almost 90% of its resources from government. It's
really, are we that bad?
It's true, actually.
Are we that bad?
Other study that
are we that bad as a country?
Yes, the private sector in this country.
Which study? A study in this country?
Yes.
Okay.
The private sector in this country.
We'll share that and put it on the
down here. It should be coming down here. That the private sector actually feeds off 90-80% from government. Final question: did your Mama Mboga experience downtime? In this election, did your portion of whatever you buy from your Mama Mboga reduce?
No, they do. Even today, I was in Nuba today, and the guy told me that the week before and the week after the elections,
right?
Yeah, his words were, you give yourself a curfew. Those are his exact words. That Kenya is the only place where before and after elections, or actually is the only place where you give yourself a curfew, because just in case anything, whatever. So he said, and that's part of the reason that people experience a
downtime.
Yes.
This has to change.
It must.
All right. You're watching Afro Political. We're here to help you have better conversations throughout the week. Marvin will bring, his slanted ideas, and then we'll fact check him down here. This is Afro Political.